Okay, let's get started. Thanks for joining. My name is Matt Cooper. I'm the COO here at Swept. And today I'm going to talk to you a little bit about streamlining your hiring process. So the goal of this talk is really to share with you how our team built a system for hiring that delivered better results in less time. And so what I mean by that is really looking at the process that we created as a cleaning company. Before we became a software company, our company was called Clean Simple. And this talk is really going to go through the process that we found saved us a tremendous amount of time in hiring people, but really improved two things: the quality and the quantity of applicants. So if you're anything like we are, or we were, there were three key problems that we ran into when we were going through hiring. So as we went through and started growing from one city into two into three, we ran into these bottlenecks early on. And they really had to do with having someone apply to a job that we had posted, and then the process of really kind of going after them, chasing them down and trying to get them to jump through a bunch of the hoops that we needed them to actually jump through. And even when we did that and we got them in and interviewed them and did the whole process, we would end up losing them to what they would most times describe as a better job. And so this was, a bit of a vicious cycle that was really frustrating, because we were putting, what we thought is all the things in the right place to make sure people had a great job, but they were still leaving. So what the first step we did was really start transitioning the company from a reactive mindset to a proactive mindset. It's specifically to do with hiring. And so what I mean by that was taking the step of, instead of having applicants come to us through email or through a call where we kind of process them as they come to us, we instead put together a process that would actually allow them to float to the surface, the ones that were really the best fit for what we needed to, the job we needed to fill. So the first step here was really creating a process that automatically screened people out when they applied. And this was as simple as creating a form on our website that was tied into our marketing automation software that asked a dozen different questions when they were applying. So instead of actually allowing people to apply by sending in their email or sending in a resume via email or giving us a call and filling out a form online, we actually had them only go to the website. So the first step was have them answer these initial dozen questions. And based on those questions, we were going to either move forward or kind of put pause on it and come back to them later, or disqualify them as a whole based on those initial responses. So once we actually did that step and we got a list of individuals that passed all the first set of criteria, we'd move them on to an info session. So instead of trying to do one at a time interviews on the phone and then in person, and all of the logistical support that's required to kind of bring those things together, we started inviting individuals to a group info session. So what this did is it allowed us to kind of take control of the entire process between their initial interest in working with us as a cleaning company and then right down to when we first met them. So once they had applied and they had not been screened out by our software, we actually would automate an email that would invite them to a pre-scheduled info session. So that info session ran twice a week, once on Wednesday and once on Friday, once during the day and once during the evening, to maximize the amount of people that we could get based on their work schedule. And so what would end up happening was, of all the people that would first apply, only a certain number of those would actually get the invite to the info session. Of the people that were requested to come to the info session, only a certain number of them would actually RSVP to that session. And then even further still, only a certain number would physically show up to that info session. And what that meant was, as they showed up at our office where we were holding, had a quick presentation for them around 15 minutes that would tell them more about our company, we would have screened out a considerable amount of people that otherwise we would have potentially even been trying to chase down. And so what the next step here was that it actually formed the basis of an actual employee or potential employee database. And this was a major mindset shift. This meant that instead of when we actually won a contract, trying to go out and post a job and responding to those jobs, we had an ever-growing database of individuals that had come through this entire funnel, and then we added additional notes once they showed up. So this is where we actually got to say, okay, did they stay in the database? Because when they showed up late. They were dressed inappropriately. They had hygiene issues. They were, that first set of physical attributes that you kind of start assessing. When they were at the info session, did they actually participate? Were they sitting there unmotivated and kind of unengaged? And what that allowed us to do is combine the process of them filling out the first set of forms, then showing up at the interview or this group info session. We decide whether or not we wanted to continue this process with them. And so this was where the actual process that they followed and our subjective opinion kind of merged together as a single database. And so once they they passed both of those, so they showed up at the interview, at the info session, and we wanted to move forward with them, they actually were scheduled for paid training. And so before they were an employee, they actually were scheduled once a week. We had a schedule. Our manager that would actually run an actual training session, and that was a preset list of tasks that we'd conduct once a week, where everyone that had already come through the info session that we approved to move further and that they wanted to move further as well would be scheduled on that training session. And so this is where we take some of the subjective analysis that we did on them as individuals, along with that objective criteria of whether or not they were a right fit for the job, and start adding some additional metrics around their fit. So once they actually conducted the training session, we had this is an example of how we actually measured a number of different dimensions for individuals that made it all the way through to training, and then they were scored. And so the final check of whether or not they were approved to potentially be an employee was really determined after this step. And so if they scored under a 5 or under a 6, they were not necessarily recommended based on a number of attributes. So this is an example. You don't necessarily need to use exactly what we did, but it was a way of systemizing what typically would take us probably around 20 to 30 hours a week when we were hiring, to around 2 to 3 hours a week, including the time to actually hold the info session. And so what we created was this job application funnel, where they start at the top, where they go to our website and they would apply. And if that system didn't screen them out based on the answers to our questions, they were invited to that info session. Then if they RSVP'd and then further actually physically attended the session, and then reapplied for that additional training that we felt they were both a fit on our end as well as their end. And once they were approved through that training, they went into our approved list of cleaners that were ready to be placed in any given job. And so the great thing was, at this point, we may have only had 2 or 3 jobs at any given time to fill, and we had this ever-increasing database of people that were fully qualified to be working with us. And so this allowed us, again, to move from this reactive mode of operating to a proactive mode of operating, because we had essentially a virtual bench of individuals that were already qualified and ready to be called on when we won that next contract. And so not everyone was always available after that. Sometimes it was a week before we won the next contract. Sometimes it was a month. But instead of having to go back to the drawing board and start over from scratch, these individuals were already qualified to know that they wanted to work with us as much as we wanted to work with them. So oftentimes, even if they had found a job, we were successful at getting them to leave that job because of all the benefits that we offered to find a better fit for them based on their requirements. So what we did when we transitioned from a cleaning company over to a software company was create a tool for the industry that's 100% free to use and always will be, specifically to help you and your company with this sort of a scenario. So what I'm going to do is run through Cleaning Jobs as the demo, so you can actually see what this looks like. So what we're looking at here is cleaningjobs.co. So this is the website that we created that basically allows you to do a very similar process to what we had originally done for our cleaning company. So you just basically sign up with your email address, click on, and then sign in. And so once you've signed in, you're able to post a job. And so that job really is nothing more than the job you would have already posted on any of the job sites that you use. So for us, we used Indeed, Craigslist, and in Canada, Kijiji is another job bank that's very active. And what we do is take our job that we were originally just writing there and create it here inside Cleaning Jobs. So as an example, you'd write a title. Let's say this is an evening cleaner, and then this is where the description would be written. And so this is where we actually go over all the pros and cons of working with us and what the job entailed, responsibilities, all the things that they needed. And so when you proceed to the next step, this is where that process of kind of coming up with these dozen questions really came into play. So as you can see here, these set amount of questions are things that are applicable when hiring a cleaner for a job. So if you look at it, would you be willing to provide a completed criminal background check? And your best answer would be yes, and you can screen them out if they were to answer no. So for us, for example, a criminal background check was an absolute must. So if they answered no, I really didn't need to see them in a list of people who applied. I just would have it pass right by. And then you go through the rest of these. So can you currently provide a background check? References, number of years of experience, whether or not they use a cell phone, English as a spoken language, and if whether or not they can read English, how do they actually get to work, so transportation, and then we give them optional ability to attach a resume. And so the next step is really around questions around their availability. And so why this was so important was this really helped mitigate that whole issue of finding the right person, but not putting them in the right job because their life circumstance dictated that they either needed evening shifts or part-time versus full-time, or full-time versus part-time, where when they applied for the job, they were basically willing to tell us anything that would get them the job. And then as soon as another job came up that was a better fit for them, they'd leave us and go over to that other company. So by asking them proactively when they apply what they're looking for, it allows you to screen people out if, for example, this was a part-time shift and they're looking for full-time work, and I know that this is an evening shift that's only, let's say, 3 times a week. I actually don't want them to qualify for this job, right? I want them to screen out. They're still going to go into the database, but I don't need to continue to process them this way. And then finally, step 4, you can review all the questions and submit it and publish. And so what happens is this job gets created in Cleaning Jobs, and we provide you this unique address that's specifically for you to be used when you post your job in, let's say, Indeed. So for example, in your Indeed post, when you go on, instead of telling them to attach their resume or call you, you'd say, all applicants, please use this link to apply. And when they click it, they're going to see the job description as well as the ability to apply and answer all the questions you need to actually fill out the information you need to contact them, as well as their availability. And so at the end of what would happen is, as applicants came in, they start getting screened out and matched based on their specific answers. So as an example here, we can see that the evening office cleaner that was published on March 12th, we have the top 3 applicants, and they're ranked by the number of questions that matched what we were looking for. So in this case, preferred answer versus the actual ideal shift. So this is a daytime, this person's looking for evening. So in all other respects, they're good. But for that really important one that we know, if I was going to try and put someone who's looking for evening work at a daytime shift, they're unlikely to be able to move forward. So I can simply remove them from this job and continue on with the next applicant. And that this is really what allowed us to move from spending 20 hours a week on hiring to about 2 to 3 hours a week, and improve the quality of cleaners that we were hiring as part of that process. So getting back to the presentation here, what this really allowed us to do was transition from this point where we were only going into hiring mode when we won a contract to always hiring. And so what that meant was we had job postings that were on all of these job banks where people would be looking for work, and we would funnel them to our application. We would typically get anywhere from 10 to 20 applicants a day actually filling out the form and qualifying for it. And so out of 100 people that would apply, we would end up hiring 2 only spend about an hour to 2 hours a week processing them and moving them through that process. So we've put together some of the best practices that we've done to help you kind of adopt these different methodologies in what we refer to as our hiring guide. And so within that hiring guide, if you use this link, you can just download it directly. It's going to go over a sample job posting. And so this really expands on what are the key things that we think are really important to include in your job posting. Then secondly, it'll provide you with some worksheets on how to conduct a standardized interview on the phone, and then also in a face-to-face interview. And what these actual worksheets allow you to do is have you and your team kind of work from the same song sheet. It makes sure that all the same questions are asked, and that you actually quantifying whether or not someone's a good fit or not is standardized over time. And this made a huge impact to the quality and the consistency of onboarding a new employee. So hopefully you've gotten a lot out of this presentation, and we'd encourage you to actually download this hiring guide and provide us some feedback. So good luck improving your hiring process, and we hope that this saves you a lot of time into the future. Thanks very much.